Let me see. Okay, great. And I'm gonna actually.
Yeah, so we're gonna record the video and post it to Lake Paran's YouTube channel after this. So if you don't feel comfortable, I don't think your picture will be shown, but if you don't feel comfortable, maybe turn off your camera just in case. Um, Thank you everyone for joining us today. For those who don't know me, I'm Camille, she, her pronouns, and I'm the AmeriCorps Vista at Lake Paran. And I'm super stoked to introduce you to Aubrey Elwes, who is our watershed steward and fieldwork intern for this past fieldwork session with Bennington College. Aubrey is a senior, and he, like I said, was our fieldwork intern, but he'll actually be staying on as a part-time permanent watershed steward, which is super exciting. And I'm really excited to share his work, for him to share his work today. He's been doing really great things and has really been helping us out along the Paran Creek watershed, as well as in the community too. So yeah, I think that's the introduction. And if Aubrey, you want to take it away, just a few housekeeping. I think we'll try to keep most of the questions until the end. I'll be watching the chat during his presentation, but if there is something pressing, feel free to ask it in the chat and I'll make it known that there's a question, but otherwise try to hold them off. But yeah, here's Aubrey.
Hey everyone, good. Thank you so much for coming out. I do want to apologize in advance if there's any sort of like quiet background noise. I am living at college, so at times it can be a little noisy. So I just wanted to warn everyone in advance. So for the duration of my presentation, I will have my camera off just because I want to make sure that the recording is not choppy. My computer has a little trouble with that. I've been doing some tests. So, but you'll get to hear plenty of my voice. So let's do this. All right. Okey-dokey. All right. All right. So, hey everyone again. My name is Aubrey Elwes, and I'm the watershed steward for Bennington Town, as Camille stated. I wanted to take some time today, not too much of it, to introduce myself and speak about the current situation at Lake Paran. Perhaps offer some insight as to why we should start focusing our efforts on our beautiful lake. So who am I? Well, beyond my work, I'm a senior at Bennington College, where I study environmental sciences under Tim Schrader, a renowned geologist. I'm sure some of you have probably heard of him. He taught me everything I know about hydrology, and I've been interested in the sciences since I was just a little kid. So scientific procedure, asking questions, if you will, is what I do. Beyond the scope of my schooling, the ideal I strive for is eco-restoration at the largest possible scale and finding ways to coexist with our surroundings to the best of humanity's ability. So, yeah. So now, even before becoming a watershed steward, I had been assessing the water quality at Lake Paran, and there's a particular chemical compound that I've been seeing for a while across all my sites at the watershed, and it's nitrates. And nitrates are polyatomic ions, and ions are usually found in an aqueous state. So aqueous usually means that they're found dissolved in some type of solution. And in this case, it's a really large body of water. And this compound is first converted from the form of ammonium. So another molecule we find in organic waste, detritus, and decomposing organisms. The process is performed by nitrifying bacteria in the soil, and they symbiotically aid plants in their growth, since plants can only consume nitrogen in certain forms, in this case, nitrates. So this, of course, means that that nitrates occur naturally, and that a respectable level of nitrates in the water table will not have adverse effects on the health of the lake, pond, rivers, or the ocean. There are also man-made sources of nitrate too to be wary of, and they are located. They're usually found in fertilizers, and in addition, we also find high levels of nitrates in facilities that utilize livestock management or perform sewage treatment. And nitrates have incredible nutritional value to all kinds of living things. So while it may seem like a good thing, too much of anything can tip the balance. With all these additions to the nitrate content covering a massive surface area of land, precipitation of all forms will carry this compound and any excess of these nutrients into bodies of water, allowing environments to change drastically. So it's really important that we definitely monitor that. So some crises that extra nutrients can bring to a system are eutrophication, excess aquatic plant growth, and changes to the types of living things we may observe in the environment. These problems are interconnected and spill into each other, so it's important to realize that. And the cataclysmic change of nutrient content may allow plants that reproduce easily to do it more efficiently. All plants are different. They're biomechanisms that tell them, hey, we have what we need and more, let's reproduce. That may get kicked up a notch to the point where ecosystems become unrecognizable. So just a little in depth, I wanted to go into what eutrophication actually is. So I want to better define it actually within the context of where Lake Paran is at as well. Eutrophication is the aging process of a lake where over a long period of time, a lake's nutrient content will begin to rise due to erosion. Plants will begin to fully take over a surface area of a lake, and as it fills in, it becomes a wetland. There is also the term cultural eutrophication, which is the process by which the aging body of water is sped up. The process of aging is sped up due to human interferences. So when excess nutrients hit a body of water, algae blooms will occur. They die relatively quickly, and decomposers will consume the oxygen in the water. This obviously affects many organisms. It renders them unable to breathe. Actually, it completely consumes the oxygen content in water. And any bottom-dwelling plants may also die due to a lack of sunlight too, because the dead algal blooms do not disappear. So not so quickly, I should say. Such a process happens quickly and nearly irreversibly. So Lake Paran is considered a mesotrophic eutrophic lake. That means it's between its middle age and oldest age. The lake is beginning to age rapidly as nitrate levels hit the waters, especially around the summertime. They'll flow downstream. And it's still too soon to draw conclusions, but after many mornings and afternoons of work, I have determined that there are nitrate concentrations of concern upstream that flow into Paran's waters. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it's some outside source and the problem needs to be studied further to draw any sort of conclusions, but it definitely means that there's some type of soil erosion that might be occurring upstream, any type of natural phenomena as well. But yeah, definitely we need to study that further. So we are beginning to observe the first changes surrounding Paran's native wildlife. A massive increase in invasive plant species populations have been observed around the lake. Eurasian milfoil and water chestnut predominantly cover a large surface area of Lake Paran's subsurface terrain. And these invasives make it extremely difficult for native aquatic plant species to succeed because they take up a lot of substrate, which is room for all plants to grow. And they also take up a surface area of sunlight as well. So a few accounts also of dead fish have been reported. I've actually seen some myself. I've talked with local fishermen who have seen dead fish rising to the surface, especially during summertime, I should say, predominantly during summertime, when we do actually see more algal blooms occurring. And it can be a proper indicator of low dissolved oxygen content in waters during the summer. So yeah, if we do nothing, Lake Paran's aquatic life will cease and the lake will become a wetland where only plants grow, and a different range of plants at that. So, and this is obviously what we do not want to happen so early in Lake Perrin's life. She's old, but not as old as she can be. So that's important to know. So what's the plan? The stewardship program's plan is stated on this slide, and I really, really want to emphasize the fostering of communication between locals and the steward. My email, which I will actually post in the chat, it's going to be posted in the chat, and a steward's job is to properly observe and analyze the lake as much as possible. But the steward is not living on the lake. So for any observations or questions, it's important to report them to the steward so that we can all have a hand in helping this body of water that we love so much. And yeah, so also on here, I wanted to mention that there is a link to a Google spreadsheet where I am posting the data regularly. Any data I collect, I study.
All right.
Oh, yes.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, I'm posting pH. I'm posting data about pH. I'm posting data about nitrate and phosphate concentrations. I'm posting it about dissolved oxygen content in the water, pressure, temperature, all of those values. And I'm going to constantly update it. And there's definitely drastic changes from week to week. So it's important that we monitor weekly. But yeah, that's where you can find the data. And if you can't, I'll share this. I'll put this link up to this presentation so people can access it. But it's also, this link is also will be accessible likely on the sites where there will be a blog post about me and what I do, and you guys can access it there. So yeah, thank you so much. One of the last things I wanted to mention actually is that it's really important to facilitate a conversation about what's going on around the lake. And so everything that you've heard about today, it'd be really nice if you guys can talk about it amongst your peers, your loved ones, all of that. Just go ahead and talk about the situation. And yeah, we can hopefully further into the future, we can actually, all of us together can designate a proper solution after studying the problem after some time, a proper solution for eco-restorative processes surrounding the lake. So thank you. Yeah. And any questions, please feel free to stay and I'll answer them to the best of my ability.
Aubrey, would you rather us put the questions in chat or just chat them to you?
You guys can totally feel free to unmute and chat that's totally fine. Yeah, but if some of you feel more comfortable posting the questions too, I'm happy to read them out and answer them as well. Yeah.
Well, let me say one thing and ask a question. One is that, well, first of all, thank you. This is really fabulous. And we have, as you know, more than other people, engaged with various state agencies to do some examination of the lake and a bit of monitoring of the lake, but this is really more practical and helpful than most of that has been. So we really appreciate that. The other thing is that I think we should, and maybe this is what you were alluding to, we should put a tab on our website that maybe includes your kind of rolling monitoring and any updates or any events or communication that you want to use so that we can keep that really active. And I also just want to express appreciation for you reaching out to communities here that don't always get wrapped into the lake, in particular the folks that fish and boat on the lake, although we're not boating right now, but you know what I mean? It's kind of like a different group, part of our community, and it's really important for them to be brought into this, discussion and conversation about the lake and its health and what's going to happen. So
most definitely. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Well, I have one more thing to say. I'm sorry, I don't mean to hog time here, but one of the things that I find challenging is that, and I do it myself, so I have to take responsibility for it, is that the not-for-profit and the property that Paran Recreations owns is in North Bennington, and North Bennington is sort of our home in a lot of ways, but the lake is also in Bennington and Shaftesbury, and most by numbers, by pure numbers, most of our guests are from Bennington. And we have struggled. I've been on the chair of the board for 15 years. We've struggled to kind of create impact in Bennington proper. And so it's just something I'd like to think about with you and others about how we can loop more people, and not more people per se, but more decision makers and more thought, from Bennington as a kind of a civic entity. So, okay, I'm done now.
Totally agree. Thank you so much. That's really good insight, though. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Good afternoon. I'm Art Whitman. I'm a chairman of the select board in Shaftsbury. And I'd like to ask you how many water sampling sites along the stream that leads into Lake Paran, and how far up into Shaftsbury have you gone with water sampling sites? I've always been concerned for years that a lot of this problem could be coming from Shaftsbury, Daly's, which is now Peckham's, previously washed a lot of sand and gravel, sediment, and that sort of stuff. And I'd like to know how far up into Shaftsbury you've had water sampling sites, and are you still taking them?
Yes, absolutely. I can answer that. So my furthest site north actually is in it's right on the border of Shaftesbury. So I'm studying there. I tried to keep my sites relatively close together so that it's easily accessible, and we can also keep the cost efficiency as well of using gas and all that. But it is pretty far right there bordering Shaftesbury. And after that, I basically I select 7 sites around Lake Paran. My sites include Lake Paran itself, a groundwater stream inflow that moves right into Lake Paran as well. I go to Frost Bridge. I check out Paran Dam. I also, after that, I'll start going up Route 67E. And I'll just go ahead and collect water, basically going up that stream, which actually comes from Shaftesbury. So the main stream there. And obviously there's a fork also, and I collect water from both those sites actually at the fork. So I go ahead and study all those. And after that, I also go down to Overley Road. There's also a sort of stream inflow too. Not as far as Shaftesbury, but there's another fork. Oh, excuse my camera. It kind of goes out of focus sometimes, but there's also a fork sort of further down south. And that fork is basically, there's a stream that runs right along and crosses perpendicular to Overley Road. So I go ahead and collect water there. I've actually found some pretty alarming nitrate levels right there, actually, which is interesting. And most recently, actually, I have found some nitrate levels, like really recently, this past Saturday, I found nitrate levels that are running down from Shaftesbury too. So and alarming ones at that too. So I actually wanted to mention this, and I think this is important for everyone. A generally high level of nitrate in a aquatic ecosystem might range somewhere basically anything above 5.0 milligrams per liter, which doesn't sound like a lot. It's obviously very small. It's tiny little milligrams of this, but it is anything above that actually, and especially consistency in those numbers can cause quite a problem for sure.
Do you have any sampling sites? You say right at the Shaftsbury border, so you haven't gone up into the area where Cleveland Avenue is, or the old Stanley Tool, or further on up into Daly's then?
I have not actually gone that far up, no. Which, yeah.
Is it a lack of money, or
it's not necessarily, it's not necessarily a lack of money. Sorry, excuse me. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, it's more so, I'd say it's more so just also keeping, a lot of sampling. If I choose more than 7 sites and all that, it'll definitely stretch my resources thin. A lot of these, it can be a little bit of money. It can also just be resources in general, like reagents and the amount of charge and all that my equipment has. It takes a lot of energy as well. So And yeah, and also it could definitely right now already the workday typically studying those 7 sites. And I'm not saying I think it's totally great to mention those sites, and I probably will test them in the future for sure, but further north in Shaftesbury. But I have not yet done it due to just lack of resources, also lack of time as well in a day. Typically I have to, it already takes about 8 hours fully, I think, to do this testing in a day. So it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time, and I'm out there collecting water just about all day, and then to come home and do this actually in my evenings. So yeah, but I want to check that out, and I'm really happy you brought that up actually, because I know that while I established these sites with the geologist and hydrologist at Bennington College, Tim Schrader, he definitely thinks that we should also at certain points, especially like even just occasionally, go further north and check along those sites in Shaftesbury. So it's definitely on our plan for sure. But yeah, those specific sites and also the companies you mentioned will be of great importance for sure. So thank you.
Thanks, Aubrey. Can you tell me a little bit about your sampling methodology? Are you taking in triplicates? I mean, water sampling has its, how close are you to the soil? And I mean, it has its challenges, I know. So
yeah. So yeah, exactly. So basically what I do is I use one of the water sampling tools I use is basically like a pole stopper. I toss that out into the lake actually when it's actually summertime. For now, what I've been doing is I've been having ice fishers help me drill holes straight into the ice and collecting water samples straight from the middle of the lake. That's what I've been doing. But when it's like springtime, summertime and stuff, I will throw out a sort of on a lead. I'll throw out one of these contraptions, a pole stopper that will basically just close and allow me to like reel in a water sample from the middle of the lake. It can also go deeper too if you tie weights to it. So that's what I use typically when I'm studying deep water bodies. And then my water sampling method, it includes taking, I get 3 vials of all 10 milliliters in terms of volume. And I will go ahead and I will basically, I don't know if this is what you're interested in, but I zero them all out basically. So that means that I'm not, I haven't yet put reagent in, and I will then, after zeroing them out, I will put the reagent in. I always wait a few minutes for the reagent to react while I'm shaking for a minute as well.
so any filtration before you?
No filtration actually. And the reason I don't want to do that is because these reagents are really, they're actually extremely powerful and will only react with any sort of nitrate or phosphate ions that are in the water. And I also don't want to do that specifically because at the same time, I'm also testing with it's basically like an everything meter. It's a deep probe that I lead into the water, and I put it just about around mid-range of depth in the lake, and I use that to test and while I'm not doing that, sometimes I have to pull out a tub if it's, I can't do that, especially when it's super cold. The equipment might not be able to handle that. So I'll take out a tub of water and I will put the probe in there, and it'll test the total dissolved solids as well, which is an incredibly crucial element to the research as well. Total dissolved solids can definitely tell us a lot about the sort of, it basically tells us a lot about how all the contents in the water together, and how it might make the water too cloudy, or it might make it so that plants aren't receiving enough sunlight and stuff. So it's super important that I'm receiving those values, especially when we start to hit summertime. So I don't do that. And the reagents are very good at reacting with just the nitrate or phosphate ions in the water. Usually
So likely, sorry.
Oh, go on. Sorry.
No, I'm just saying, likely you've written your methods up for Tim or
yes,
other purposes. So I'd be my experience in water testing is more microbiological. So
interesting.
It's a different. I was just interested in the sampling technique, but maybe you could post the methods as well.
Yes, totally, absolutely.
Interested to see those. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely would be happy to do that.
Aubrey, and if I might add, and we do have another question in the chat. But just circling back to Art's comment, I did post the water sampling sites that Aubrey created in the chat. So it kind of gives a better overview of where exactly he's testing every week, twice a week. And also to the point of, expanding the testing sites. One of the goals that we have for our watershed steward in the next year is to first we would like to send a survey out to at least North Bennington residents or anyone in Shaftesbury too who lives along the Paran watershed and kind of gauge homeowners or citizens' value of the watershed, and also if they would be interested in doing kind of like a citizen science water quality testing volunteer. And with those volunteers, we could train them and give them the necessary equipment to go out on their own and collect testing data so Aubrey's not doing so much every week, or to expand the sites. So that'll be included in the survey, but just something to think about, because I think that would be a great program and I think people would be interested in doing it in the community. But yeah. And I don't know, Aubrey, do you have anything to say to that?
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that definitely encases what our plan for communicating with the community in the future. So yeah, as long as we definitely tell everyone about it too, and anyone who might be interested in learning how to water sample as well. It's extremely it can be a little complicated at first, and then it becomes more of a repetitive and second nature thing. But it's super important, and any sort of it can totally act as community outreach. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then just a question that I received in the chat: what can be done to save the lake?
Yeah, so interesting. There's quite a lot of different ways to do that. It's a lot of different people believe there's different ways to do that, and I think that the way I have been studying and the things I'm interested in, I'm very interested in ecological restoration, specifically using native aquatic plants actually, and replanting in areas of need. So a lot of places where we might have pulled weeds in the past and all that, I think it's really important to replace. In my opinion, it would be interesting to find a way maybe to replace said substrate with native aquatic plants that are, just would help out a lot, and also specifically maybe help with nitrate concentrations in the water, maybe some people even think, and this is really important too, obviously upstream establishing buffers, which I think is already a part of the plan, establishing buffers and putting in a lot of, but these buffers can include native aquatic plants too, that can sort of deal with this nitrate issue into the future is really nice and great for the health of the lake. Yeah, so there's different methods and tools to use for sure. I think it's very important though to have a full grasp of the situation, obviously, before trying to do any of this, and also knowing exactly. It's important not to just go and establish these things without first studying the ecosystem very closely, knowing exactly what you're affecting. And sometimes it's difficult to know what you're affecting on a microbial level. So it's really important that you understand just exactly what you're changing in the system. So studying it is the best thing we can do for now. But definitely coming up with quick solutions to after studying the problem is going to be super beneficial as well. So yeah.
I did want to say about a year ago, it was summertime, so it wasn't a year ago, it was in the warm weather. Someone called me from a mobile home park up in Shaftesbury that was along the Paran Creek, and said that they had been filing complaints with the state for a long time about sewage that was being emptied directly into the creek. I never was able to get to visit, and see exactly where this was, but I do think that, it's worth, when the weather's better, putting waders on and walking up the creek to some distance and seeing what's coming into it at different places, because I think there's a lot of different sources of contamination. And then, of course, there's the, as I've learned, they call it the orphan septic system in Paran acres, which when I think under normal circumstances operates fine, but when there's heavy rain, which of course we're getting more and more of, there's definitely runoff into the lake. And that will come in like a big rush, and it will contaminate the water in the whole lake for a short period of time. And these are obviously really long-term issues that need to be addressed. And I guess my other point is that, you know, we have to keep this monitoring and figure out an advocacy strategy. We have to keep this up because we have to be able to make a difference for this lake, or as you've said, it's going to revert to what all lakes do revert to at some point. And I hate to say it, but the state, in our many years of talking to them, are kind of like, yeah, this is what happens, you know, sort of, that's their general attitude. And we're like, well, we actually would like to slow that down as much as we possibly can. So what you're doing is really, really awesome and important. And I hope that we can find the resources to, I just want to say, Aubrey's a senior at Bennington College, and we are hoping to find financial resources to hire him to work and to continue this work at least part-time after his graduation. So that's something we're looking at right now. If you have any ideas, let us know. Always got a pitch.
Totally. Any other questions? Anybody, any concerns?
Yeah, hi, thank you, Aubrey. I was wondering about, like, once you are able to, I know this might be, you know, a while from now, but once you're able to determine the sites which have the most nitrate contamination, how would you then go about finding where that is coming from? Like,
yeah, it's actually there's a lot. I mean, there's definitely better ways to probably pinpoint it, but I think the way that I've been taught by Tim is it's kind of an old archaic method of, you know, basically just heading upstream and continuously testing until you reach a point where you're not drawing up any nitrate concentrations anymore, or at least a much smaller amount. So that's definitely the way that they've done it before. And I think that's the way I would too, just with my expertise in the tools I use. And yeah, that would probably be my method. But if anyone actually has any other methods, like I know that we have a microbiologist here actually who may also have a differing method as well.
and then once, but once you determine the sites which are, you know, like you said, how would you go about finding, like, would you look for the like livestock facilities around in that area, like the actual specific sites that are causing you know, the waste disposal and things that you were talking about? Like, how would you just contact like any of the you know, facilities that you know to be around that site?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think so. I think it's also very complicated because it also it's I think it definitely needs to be what we do for sure. I think that it's absolutely crucial to definitely reach out to these facilities, let them know that there's, you know, this waste entering from, you know, their property or whatever. But it can also be difficult too, because obviously we cannot actually go on the property of these different facilities. So it becomes really difficult to say like, oh, it's coming from this site when you're legally not allowed on the property. And you're testing like above or below. But usually if you're testing below, you can pretty much determine and say, hey, and also if you can determine a site of inflow from the said property, you can, I think then you have enough evidence to go about it. But yeah, I think that is actually, that question's interesting, and it's slightly beyond me right now. But I'm definitely interested in what the procedure for going about that would be.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
what is the plan? It seems to me that, as you said, getting the community aware and really involved. Is there some kind of summer fair or community events that you can participate in and have a booth, a stand that's just basically inspiring people of the town that they should care about this if they don't already, and how they can be a part. I mean, obviously fundraising is going to be really important. I know that you're really into live bio machines. That seems to make such sense for a lot of water bodies. And I don't think it would be too expensive to build the bio machine. I know we're not really talking about that far ahead, but it's I think raising funds, awareness, and also getting the community to want to raise money, reach out beyond Vermont, possibly, to fundraise, to have a allotted amount of money to put forward as soon as you have these answers and you've come up with a solution, to get going as fast as possible. We don't have time to waste.
Yeah. So to answer the first part of your question, I think totally, like, there's a lot of plans right now to have summer camps, especially for kids around surrounding Lake Paran. There's also a plan there. I know another student at Bennington College is actually working on putting up educational like signs and information around the lake, which is going to be a much more like interactive experience if you're hiking around the lake and trying to have an outdoor experience, and also have like some facts that you know a lot of the camp counselors might give to the kids around the area. But I really like the idea of having some type of stand if there ever is some event where that would be possible. I think having that would be great. And then I think to answer your second question regarding biomachinery and stuff like that, I think it's becomes a little more complicated because there is a lot of like education and awareness, that even more sort of like awareness we'd have to bring regarding that, and sort of showing people the science and you know, the behind it, and also how it doesn't doesn't actually affect the ecosystem beyond actually just acting as a buffer or repair. Is something that I think would, you know, it definitely requires a larger research paper. I know my thesis here at Bennington College is actually going to be regarding just that sort of thing. I'm working with the chemistry professor on campus, John Bullock, who he and I are going to be running an experiment to test certain native aquatic plants like Alodia and bulrush and all those plants that we know, or not know, that's a difficult thing to say in a scientific field, but that we are certain kind of pull nitrates and or like nutrients out of water, that we are going to be studying specifically nitrate, since it pertains to sort of the area and the problem that I've already been studying for about a year and a half now with Tim. And I'll write up my thesis regarding how efficient said plants are at doing this, whether they actually do, and you know, how well they do. If there's any, you know, we're going to try to really control the experiment to make sure that it's just water, nitrate concentration in that water, separating it from all the other things that you might find, like larger organic waste, or, you know, all these other kind of chemical compounds, even hard metals. And we're gonna then, after controlling that experiment, we're going to test and see what results we find. And I think that hopefully when I write this thesis and stuff, maybe we can, you know, find a way to, you know, present it and all that. But thank you. Yeah, that's a really good question.
Just another suggestion, because of course the people that fish the lake and use it as a food source have probably the greatest interest. Yes, you've got the boaters and the kind of summer, you know, enjoyment, entertainment, and leisure, but the fishermen would be a great community to unite and bring together. They have the vested interest that the lake, the healthier it is, the more fish that are there, for them to sustain themselves. So bringing them together, I think would be, and their ideas like a fishing contest, that.
Oh, we actually did have an ice fishing contest actually the other day, and it's great. We put up signs about this specific presentation as well, everywhere. But yeah, I think you're totally right. And reaching out in a more official way, and getting the sort of, this large group of, there's a lot of fishermen that come even from all over the state and beyond. Really, I've met some people beyond. They are definitely a community that is very interested in conservation. So absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
If anyone doesn't have any more questions, I think we can go ahead and wrap it up. But thank you so much, Aubrey. This has been such a wonderful conversation.